can we, or how close or how far are we from education being the same for two different zip codes? Right here in the St. Louis region, you can be just a couple of digits off and have a very different, speaking of data, your outcomes are very different, or likely to be very different.
We're not even close, and we give ourselves way too much credit for trying, okay? And the reality that depending upon an accidental birth or where you happen to live, we have huge disparities in the delivery of basically a public infrastructure, because that's what education is part of the infrastructure of a society, and everybody's entitled to it. And I'd almost argue that I would love to see somebody file a 14th Amendment case in the Supreme Court about the inequities relative to how, I think they've done it before and lost, but the reality is if children are citizens of the United States, and they are, then they have an equal protection right under the 14th Amendment. And so the fact that we inequitably fund education based on the randomness of geography and ethnicity fundamentally undermines their rights as United States citizens, as far as I was concerned.
And I think some would argue hinders our overall economy. This isn't just some may look at this as a moral question or the right thing to do, but you can also be fairly pragmatic about this. I think it's we've talked on the show before. It's not good for the rest of the region if one area is suffering.
Yeah, I'd like to just speak to that. And our problem, the reason we don't do it is because we don't see education for children as a moral imperative. When you get into the economic benefit or the societal benefit, that's a policy question, and you got options on policy. You can do it one way or you can do it another. You don't have options when things are, or you're confronted with moral imperatives. You either do them or you don't do it. And once we make education, again, a moral imperative, then we're going to be required as adults in a society to live up to that responsibility. So I think you do, that the problem is with framing it in non-moral terms. And we have that moral responsibility to children, and we're failing to meet it for a lot of children, not all children, but for way too many children every day.
As long as you continue to draw boundaries around schools, we will never solve this problem. We're going to be spinning our wheels, because here's what happens. Some schools do great. They start improving, and then what happens? People start moving into there. They raise property values, and the poor people have to move someplace else because the property values have gone up, and they move into other districts. This is what happens. People move into better districts, and some other district then has a surplus of low achieving disadvantaged students who come from poor families, and then the people there move out because that district's not doing well, and they move into the other districts that start performing better. So as long as you continue to draw circles around schools and say you have to go here because you live here, we're going to have the same problems.
There's not a value in their being tied to their communities and their neighborhoods and kind of being geographically committed to one area?
Depending upon your perspective, if we look back historically to 1982, when the Liddell plaintiffs and the Caldwell NAACP plaintiffs in the school desegregation case filed their motion for unitary status, had Judge Hungate at that time determined that the plaintiffs were able to meet their burden of persuasion, there would have been a single district from the Mississippi to the Missouri River. There would have been no St. Louis Public, no Parkway, no Rockwood. There would be the metropolitan St. Louis district. Resources would be unified. Teachers, based upon the plan submitted, would have been transferred based on the need, where unlike in medicine, where you use triage, where your most skilled professionals go to those who need the services immediately and the most, master teachers would have gone to the areas of highest need.
And I think it also depends on, how do you define community? Families have a lot of different types of communities. There's their faith-based community. It doesn't mean that their church has to be one block away. It could be that the church that they've selected is in a different part of St. Louis. They have school communities. They have their local neighborhood community. There are a lot of ways to establish community in a school that gives you a sense of belongingness. And so there's their value in community, absolutely, but it doesn't mean there's value in saying you are locked in because of your zip code to only being able to attend these schools.
Is this something that you think about often, or do you not have time to even go to the theoretical level of, or do you worry about your boundary going away, or do you think it's a good thing, or again, is it something that you've got so much else on your plate?
For me and for many of my colleagues, it's not a regular worry. We're entrenched in the work. We are doing the work while everyone else is theorizing.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that we as a region, we've seen it with what has happened in Normandy and Riverview. We've started to realize our neighbors matter and their success matters. And I think we need to find a way for our community to realize that Clayton needs to care about St. Louis needs to care about University City, Pattonville needs to care about Hazelwood. We need to realize that we all go up together or we all go down together. The boundaries are there, but they also aren't there, and we've seen that. What is good for the region is good for the region, and what's bad for the region, even if it's part, it hurts us all. It hurts our economy, it hurts the businesses that will come here. All of that ties to education.
And it's a moral imperative, or should be?
It should be. And I also want to go back to what James was saying. I think, to be honest with you, if we spend a lot more time training our teachers and putting our money in them and their training and the wraparound services that one individual can, and the relationships that one individual can build, I think it's not going to matter where that school is located or what socioeconomic status that student comes from. Their success will be the same. And I think, it might be a dream world that I live in, but I do believe that. I think that relationships play that large of a role in our educational society. And I think that as long as we continue to hire teachers, and we're trying our best to do that at Jennings, is hire teachers that will give you 125% all the time, and don't take no for an answer that a kid says, well, I just can't do that. No, that's not. We're going to find a way for you to do that. I think that is going to carry us all the way and continue to raise our schools and continue to raise our communities.
And the leadership to support those teachers.
Absolutely.
And certainly, Casey, it's not just the metropolitan, urban, suburban area. We have to look to rural Missouri. Every child in the state deserves the same high quality 21st century education to be able to compete in the global economy. It's been said before, it needs to be said again. Any Missouri child should expect the highest quality of education.
And I don't have a theory of how you fix this, but there's a proverb, I believe, that says you can't put new wine in old skins. And part of our challenge is, again, we live in a 21st century world, and we have a 19th century education delivery system. Now, something's got to give.
When you put that new wine in an old skin, it breaks.
It breaks, okay, and that's what I mean. And we have tendency to be very narrow and lack the ability to think in new paradigms. So we've had a major paradigm shift in the world and in this country, and we just have not culturally and intellectually caught up with it as a population. So it makes it real difficult and problematic to have serious discussions about what's the best delivery system, what's the values underlying them, because a lot of times the values are the same. You're just tactically arguing different points of view. But we're trying to hang on to things that have outlived their usefulness. And so a large part of things that we do in the public sector should have been put to bed a long time ago. And if we were business, we'd be out of business because you couldn't stay in business with these archaic systems. So I don't know how we make that leap culturally and intellectually, but that's the challenge in fixing the education problem.
Okay, we'll talk.